Chapter 246, The Source of Danger. On one side, the group closest to Fujin was a Kiri group of 5 led by their third Jounin. The former Kiri Jounin rapidly weaved hand signs. Water release, water wall jutsu. A water wall appeared in front of his group of 5 just before the combination attack reached them. The jutsu hit the water wall and broke through it as if it was air. A huge amount of steam was released as the entire water wall evaporated. Renzo saw with wide eyes as 5 of his men were being engulfed by the firestorm. He could hear their screams. He quickly completed hand signs and shouted, "Quickly flood this place." Water release, exploding water shockwave. The other 5 in his group also used the same jutsu. A huge amount of water was released which formed giant waves and moved towards the incoming attack and their allies. On the other side, a couple of Jounin slammed their hands on the ground. Earth release, earth wall jutsu. 2 walls appeared in front of them. However, the range of the combination attack was too much. It easily engulfed the walls and hit the group regardless. Unlike the battle-hardened Kiri rogues, this group didn't have the same expertise. For the first time in their lives, they began experiencing the unique feeling of being cooked alive. A few quickly escaped into the ground while the others screamed miserably within the firestorm. The group behind them saw the terror in front of them. Shinjo quickly slammed his hands on the ground. Earth release, earth dome. Seeing the mistake made by the group in front of him, he chose a jutsu that would protect them from all sides. The fire-wind combination jutsu engulfed the dome, but the people inside were safe. Water and fire clashed on the other side of the battlefield. The combined efforts of 6 ninjas overpowered the combination jutsu and water waves engulfed their allies. The water doused the fire on them and provided them with some relief. 4 Kiri rogues were burnt badly. Only the Jounin was in better shape as he had a thin layer of water armor surrounding him. A look of relief appeared on the faces of the 6 ninjas when suddenly they began feeling the heat. They looked behind themselves and saw in horror as another jutsu of the same scale approached them. Since the second bandit group didn't stop the attack and just protected themselves, the Kiri rogue ninjas had to face an attack from both sides. This situation was a result of Fujin's clever manipulation of the battlefield. Since he split into 2 groups, the bounty hunters assumed that he wanted to run away. They didn't even notice that they were all in a straight line. All their attention was entirely on the pair in front of them. Renzo once again weaved hand signs. In the nick of time, he completed his jutsu and spat out massive amounts of water. His jutsu was overwhelmed, but the water brought them enough time for others to repeat that jutsu. A water pool was formed which engulfed the 11 Kiri rogue ninjas and kept them protected from the fire. However, the water itself was heating up and evaporating at a rapid speed. Everyone could feel the heat, especially the 4 people from the first group who were very badly burnt. Renzo looked at the firestorm with a frown on his face. He cursed, "Horrible. The intel was way off. It didn't mention large-scale wind jutsus. It didn't even say that he knew any fire jutsus. All it said was to be careful of his vacuum jutsus and swordplay." Suddenly, his eyes widened as he realized, vacuum jutsus. Fuck. Despite being underwater, he shouted, "Be careful." It was a no-brainer that Fujin's ability with the fire release was completely a surprise to them. After all, he had developed it entirely during his time with the Umbu. While he didn't intend to keep it a secret like his lightning release, he hadn't been on any mission without his mask. So very few were aware of it. Fujin's details in the bingo book were almost 2 years old. Since he was never seen leaving the village after getting the bounty hunters assumed that he had given up on his ninja career. Fujin's clones observed the bounty hunters. In the group that used earth walls, 3 had escaped underground while the remaining 6 were burning. Behind them, 15 people were hiding in an earth dome. A smirk formed on both their faces. A dozen vacuum bullets formed in both their mouths. They launched them all simultaneously. The group of 15 bounty hunters were feeling safe inside the dome. Suddenly, bullets rained into the dome. They were all caught off guard and couldn't even move. 12 ninjas had their hearts, brains, or throats pierced. They collapsed on the spot. The remaining 3 were also injured but could still move around. They quickly escaped underground in terror and moved towards the Kiri group. On the other side, Fujin's clones observed the Kiri ninjas being protected by water and guessed, this group looks to be exclusively from Kiri. Whereas that squad is only using Earth release. Does this bounty hunter group have factions within them? Oh well, they'll all be dead anyways. Wind release, vacuum serial wave jutsu. Sharp vacuum blades were launched at the water pool protecting them. The vacuum blades moved through the fire and into the water right when Renzo shouted. The 4 ninjas that were badly burnt didn't even see the attack coming and were cut into 2. The Jounin who was injured tried to dodge as well. He barely moved his body and head out of the way. But one vacuum blade hit below his right knee and cut his leg off. The remaining 6 managed to dodge the attack. Renzo's heart ached. 4 Chunins were dead while 1 Jounin would no longer be able to fight. That was a huge loss for his group. He felt a great hatred for Fujin and the messenger. At the same time, he felt regret for choosing Fujin as the target. However, his expression soon became vicious. He decided, since you have caused us so much loss, I will claim your bounty no matter what. I cannot disappoint Lord Mizukage any further. The effects of the fire-wind combination jutsu had finally begun dissipating. Renzo looked at his subordinates that were still fine. They noticed his gaze and nodded. Soon, 6 bounty hunters from the other group came out of the ground next to the Kiri survivors. They looked at the situation around them in shock. Of the 35 attackers, only 6 were still uninjured. As many as 23 had died or were critically injured. And it had barely been over a couple of minutes since they began chasing after Fujin. Swords appeared in the hands of Fujin and his clones. They flickered towards the bounty hunters. The combination of searing migraine and infinite breakthrough jutsus was one of his strongest methods. Since this group managed to survive, using the same jutsu once again on them wouldn't be very effective. After all, he no longer had the element of surprise. Renzo noticed his movements and said, "They are coming, prepare yourself." Everyone readied themselves. Fujin's attacks had eliminated most of the weaker ones from their ranks. Of the remaining people, half had Jounin ranks before going rogue. Fujin's clone appeared to one side of the group and swung his sword from 5 meters away. A sword wave was launched at them. The expression of the group became grim. Apart from Renzo, only one person was able to follow the movement of Fujin and his clones. Just before the sword slash could hit them, a barrier appeared around them. The slash hit the barrier and caused it to shake, but it stood erect. Fujin's eyes landed on the Jounin who created the barrier. He thought, so this guy is probably their seal master. Fujin wasn't bothered that his attack wasn't successful. The information he gained in exchange for merely swinging his sword was sufficient. However, before he could attack once more, Renzo left the barrier. He raised his sword and slashed it down on the clone who had just attacked the barrier. Fujin's clone easily blocked his sword, but couldn't cut through it as Renzo also used chakra flow on his sword. At the same time, Shinjo and 2 jounins from his group exited the barrier and attacked the other 3 Fujins. Fujin was surprised. He defended while analyzing the barrier. It looks like this is a one-way barrier. It prevents entry but allows exit. A good way to keep attacking from a location. Suddenly, 4 more bounty hunters exited the barrier. They were the Fortunins, including Shiro, from Renzo's group. Fujin frowned, he didn't want to get ganged up on. So the 4 of them counterattacked. Renzo was able to hold his opponent back, but the other 3 were feeling overwhelmed. Fujin's clones barely managed to get away from them and were about to attack the 4 ninjas that exited the barrier when those ninjas avoided Fujin and ran in 4 different directions. Fujin was confused. He thought, the hell? Are they quitting the group and escaping? Or do they plan to attack me in the back? He didn't want to risk getting pincered and wanted to attack them, but the jounins caught up and began fighting once again. Since they blocked him, Fujin confirmed, they aren't running away. The 4 ninjas moved and stood surrounding Fujin and the rest. They made the snake hand seal and clapped their hands. Immediately, a violet barrier began appearing and surrounded Fujin and the other bounty hunters. The barriers formed 4 walls, a roof, and another layer underground, cutting off all means of escape. Fujin was shocked. He muttered, 4 violet flames formation. No wonder I felt such an intense danger. Chapter 247, Fooling Everyone. A grin spread on Renzo's face. He said, you are now trapped. I was planning to just kill you and get your head. But since you have killed 4 of my men, I will torture you until you beg for death. The morale of the remaining hunters in the barrier finally recovered. Fujin thought, just 4? Are there multiple groups here? No fear appeared on Fujin's face. He retorted, torture me. He looked towards his right and said, I left the village to bait and hunt you down. If you dissolve the formation and surrender, you might be able to keep your life. Otherwise, even if you manage to kill me, your only result will be death. The bounty hunters were shocked to hear that Fujin was the bait. Renzo and others followed Fujin's gaze. Their eyes widened as 4 Konoha ninjas appeared outside the barrier. Shinjo muttered with a grim face, we were schemed against. It is Kakashi of the Sharingan. Their morale, which had just recovered, crashed down. Fujin's words were completely true. They would have a very difficult battle to just kill Fujin. Facing even stronger Konoha ninjas right after it would be a certain death. Meanwhile, Kakashi's group also had grim faces. Yamanaka-ken said, Fujin is trapped. Kakashi too had a grim face. He said, the barrier has a high demand for chakra. And all 4 ninjas need to keep supplying chakra continuously. We will target one spot and kill one of them. The battlefield entered a deadlock. The Konoha jounins couldn't interfere. And though the bounty hunters were safe for the moment, they were very fearful for their life. Fujin noticed the distraction and immediately took advantage. The clones gathered chakra. The 4 jounins facing them noticed it and reacted. However, a dozen vacuum bullets were already fired at each of them. Despite the low distance and the fast speed of the bullets, they still moved their body as much as they could. Renzo dodged 10 bullets and the remaining 2 he blocked with his sword. However, cracks spread through his sword due to the power behind the bullets. His expression became dark as he realized, if I hadn't used chakra flow on the swords, the bullets might have pierced straight through them. However, the other 3 weren't as strong as him. They could only move sufficiently for the bullets to miss their vital organs. A bullet grazed the right arm of Shinjo. It left a cut so deep that even his bone was visible. The other two were hit by 2 to 3 vacuum bullets each. Unfortunately for those two, they were once again standing right behind each other. So despite dodging, they were targeted by the vacuum bullets heading towards them from their back. One of them was very unlucky. A vacuum bullet hit his back and pierced straight through his heart. He dropped dead. The other one had a couple more holes created in his body but luckily avoided any critical injuries. One of Fujin's clones laughed and taunted, "This barrier is good. This way, none of you can run away." Ha 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 ha. Not wanting to lose any more morale, Renzo immediately attacked the clone closest to him and shouted, "Everyone! Attack him! Attack and kill all 4 of him. Only after he is dead we can plan on how to escape the ones outside the barrier." There was still another barrier created inside the 4 violet flames formation. It still had 5 people. One was the injured Jounin from Renzo's group. Another was the Seal Master while 3 were from the other group. Other than the injured Jounin, the others exited the barrier and attacked Fujin's clones. The Seal Master said, "His chakra has become very low. He won't be able to continue for much longer." Fujin's clones were all low on chakra. They had spent a lot of their chakra on the fire-wind combination jutsu. And after using vacuum jutsus repeatedly, they didn't have much chakra. Outside the barrier, the Konoha ninjas were getting worried. They were bombarding the barrier with ninjutsu at the spot where Shiro was. The barrier shook but still stood erect. However, the 4 ninjas, especially Shiro, were under a lot of pressure. Their chakra was being drained rapidly. Suddenly, Pakun noticed something and looked to his left. After observing properly, he said, "Kakashi, focus on your smell in that direction." Kakashi was surprised by Pakun's request. He quickly gathered chakra in his nose and enhanced his sense of smell. Suddenly his expression became very peculiar. Guy noticed and asked, "What did you smell?" Kakashi shook his head and said, "Nothing. Keep an eye on the barrier. We won't attack anymore as we might run out of chakra before the barrier breaks. If that happens, we will be in a tougher spot." Guy and the 2 special Jounins from the Yamanaka clan realized that Kakashi was hiding something. They didn't question him and began paying attention to fighting inside the barrier. Without their attacks, the 4 ninjas maintaining the formation sighed in relief. They quickly consumed a soldier pill to recover their chakra rapidly. Yamanaka Ken said, "Though maintaining the barrier needs a lot of chakra, they could rest until they have recovered if they keep using soldier pills. Should we call in reinforcements to prevent that?" Kakashi shook his head and replied, "No need. There are only 12 left and 2 are severely injured. Regardless of the pills, the 4 maintaining the barrier will be exhausted. We can take them out without much issue." Yamanaka Ken nodded. Inside the barrier, Fujin and his clones fought intensely for 5 minutes. However, the remaining ninjas were all very careful. Fujin took deep breaths while analyzing, "They are too careful. In the last 5 minutes, I only managed to kill that guy with 5 to 6 holes in his body. Though I injured the rest to varying degrees, I haven't been able to injure them critically." He looked towards his other clones. At the same time, they too looked into his eyes and nodded. Suddenly, 3 clones flickered away and appeared next to Shiro. Renzo had a bad feeling. He and the rest ran towards them, but the 3 clones touched the barrier and at the next moment exploded. The force of the explosions was felt throughout the barrier. Shiro fell to his knees and began vomiting blood, while the remaining 3 also felt the impact. They began coughing blood. Renzo shouted in panic, "Hang on. The barrier must not fall." The four rogue ninjas gritted their teeth and forcefully maintained the formation. Kakashi and the rest didn't manage to enter inside. Renzo looked viciously at Fujin and said, "That was stupid. Without clones, you are an easy target for us." He immediately ran towards Fujin, who was breathing roughly. Everyone could see that he was exhausted. Guy was getting restless, but Kakashi said, "It's fine, just watch." Renzo swung his sword at Fujin. Fujin deflected his blow with his sword and punched him with his left hand. Renzo punched back at his fist. However, Fujin opened his fist at the last moment and caught Renzo's fist. A grin broke on his face. Renzo suddenly had a bad feeling. Without a word, Fujin exploded. All the bounty hunters were stunned. The explosion created a dust cloud. In a second, a body was launched out of the dust cloud. He landed a few meters away. It was Renzo. His left arm was completely blown off. His chest, abdomen, face, and thighs had hideous burns and were covered in blood. In addition to the existing horrible scars, his entire appearance looked similar to that of a terrifying demon. One of the bounty hunters muttered in disbelief, "Did he explode his main body?" Renzo replied with a hoarse voice, "It was a shadow clone." A sense of disbelief and shock spread through the four ninjas maintaining the barrier and the remaining 7 ninjas inside the barrier. Such huge casualties were inflicted upon them by merely shadow clones. Finally, one said, "No wonder he has a 20 million bounty." No, even a 20 million bounty is low for him. Outside the barrier, everyone other than Kakashi and Pakun was shocked. Yamanaka-ken exclaimed, "That was a shadow clone? Where is his real body?" On cue, Fujin flickered behind him. They quickly turned around to see him. There wasn't a single scratch on his body. Guy and the others realized that Kakashi and Pakun had smelled his scent and hence stopped attacking the formation. Kakashi looked at him and memories regarding Fujin's graduation exam surfaced. Fujin had made quite an impact that day by asking for a chakra metal sword. Kakashi never imagined that the boy would become so strong in just a few years. He said, "Good work." Guy had no idea how Fujin managed to achieve this. But he didn't care. He raised his thumb and said with a grin, "You are good. I can feel the power of youth flowing through you." The two Yamanaka ninjas also looked at Fujin with surprise in their eyes. The bounty hunters in the barrier noticed Fujin outside the barrier. They had already expected. However, the eyes of the seal master widened. He exclaimed in horror, "His chakra!" Chapter 248, The Formation Breaks. Renzo ignored his missing arm and all his injuries and tried to analyze when Fujin switched with the clone. He realized, according to the intel, he moves very fast. That is why we set up the trap and prepared the formation in the first place. However, when he escaped, his speed didn't match the intel. But our minds were too occupied with claiming his bounty and we didn't notice the anomaly. He probably switched himself with a clone even before we exited the hidden bases while his clones moved slowly to catch us off guard with that combination jutsu. Renzo's analysis was very close to the truth. Fujin created a shadow clone with 20% of his chakra and escaped right after sensing that he was facing 35 enemies. He hid his chakra signature and scent and moved without making any sounds or leaving any trail, due to which the sensors among the bounty hunters never sensed his main body. Later on, when he saw the 4 violet flames formation, Fujin realized why he was feeling a sense of danger. After realizing that his backup was Kakashi, he stopped hiding his scent so that Kakashi could smell his scent and stop worrying. While it could expose a flaw to the bounty hunters, Fujin didn't care as the bounty hunters were already in deep trouble. Inside the barrier, everyone looked at the seal master, who was also a censor, as he exclaimed loudly, "His chakra." Renzo looked at him and asked, "What about his chakra?" The seal master gulped and said, "It's massive. It's almost twice your maximum chakra, Renzo." He likely only used around 20 to 25% of his chakra on those 4 shadow clones. The eyes of the ninjas inside the barrier widened in horror as they took a look at Fujin once again. Though Fujin had improved a lot during his time in the Umbu, his biggest improvement was the increase in his chakra reserves. As Ryu had speculated, the growth in Fujin's chakra reserves had begun slowing down. But thanks to the fact that his chakra reserves were already comparable to a Jounin and the aid provided by the elemental crystals, his growth was still massive. His chakra reserves had grown by 3 times in the last 20 months. In another 6 months, his chakra reserves would reach the same level as Renjiro's. However, Fujin did sense that his growth was slowing down rapidly. So he wasn't sure about reaching Hiruzen's level of chakra at his current rate. Kakashi looked at the spot where Fujin's 3 clones had exploded and said, "Focus your jutsus on that ninja again." The Konoha ninjas were about to attack when Fujin said, "Wait, I'll give them a few more explosions." He created 6 shadow clones, each with 5% of his chakra. 3 flickered close to Shiro while the other 3 flickered close to the other 3 ninjas maintaining the formation. Kakashi nodded and weaved a few hand signs as well. Lightning release, shadow clone jutsu. A shadow clone infused with lightning appeared and followed Fujin's clones. Fujin's clones once again touched the barrier and exploded. Shiro was prepared this time and poured more chakra into the barrier. However, the explosions were much stronger as the clones were full of chakra. The impact of the explosion was once again sent through the barrier. As the person closest to the explosion, once again the majority of the impact was borne by Shiro. He collapsed on the ground and almost lost consciousness. However, he gritted his teeth and forced himself to stay awake. He said to himself, "No. I have to stay awake. Otherwise, all of us will be dead." Through sheer will, he forced himself to stay awake. Unfortunately, Kakashi's lightning shadow clone appeared and transformed into lightning and hit the barrier on one single point. The barrier could no longer hold on and a small hole appeared in it as the lightning broke through. It hit Shiro and electrocuted him. Shiro was already on his last legs. He didn't even have the energy to scream as his body was electrocuted to death. With his death, the entire formation collapsed. Immediately, all 5 Konoha ninjas flickered towards the opponents. The bounty hunters were on guard as well. As soon as the formation collapsed, they began running away in different directions. However, compared to the fresh Konoha ninjas, the bounty hunters were extremely tired. Fujin's clones immediately attacked the other 3 ninjas who were maintaining the formation. They were already exhausted and low on chakra. None among them could put up a fight and were beheaded with ease. Fujin's clones immediately flickered towards the ones who were escaping. Kakashi flickered behind Renzo. Despite being gravely injured, Renzo stopped running and swung his sword at Kakashi. However, lightning appeared in Kakashi's hand and hit the blade. Despite the chakra around Renzo's sword, lightning still conducted through his sword and into his body. Kakashi said, "Higashi Renzo, you are a long way from home." Renzo's sword shattered and Kakashi's hand pierced into his chest. At the same time, Guy appeared behind Shinjo. Shinjo began weaving hand signs. However, Guy grinned, "Too slow." Before Shinjo could complete his hand signs, Guy had already reached his position. His eyes widened as he saw a kick coming at him from the top. He immediately moved to his right. Guy's kick landed on the ground. Shinjo was still maintaining his hand seal, however, Guy's kick tore the ground open. Hundreds of small stones were launched in all directions. Shinjo was hit by dozens of small stones at rapid speed. He was still unharmed, however, he couldn't continue weaving hand signs. Guy quickly attacked him once again. Shinjo snorted internally, "Do you think that only you can use taijutsu?" Shinjo's physique was much larger and more muscular than Guy's. He formed his fist and punched back at Guy. Their fists collided. Shinjo's expression immediately changed. An intense pain coursed through his entire arm. He cursed, "What the fuck is his body made of?" Unfortunately, he didn't have any time to actually ask that question. Guy's second punch was coming straight at him. Unwillingly, he had to punch back with his other arm. An intense pain coursed through that arm as well. However, it was much worse due to the injury caused by Fujin earlier. He cursed, "Fuck. It feels like my arm will break into two." Guy immediately noticed that his opponent was in a lot of pain. He didn't miss the opportunity and bombarded Shinjo with punches and kicks. Shinjo, who dared to match Guy in taijutsu despite his injuries, was overwhelmed. He was beaten to a bloody pulp. Guy knocked him unconscious and tied him up while thinking, Lord Hokage wanted some prisoners to check their memories. This guy looked quite strong. He should have some information. Some distance away from where Guy and Shinjo were fighting, Fujin flickered behind one of the three remaining subordinates of Shinjo. The bounty hunter noticed Fujin and turned around to fight. However, he was already very exhausted. There were dozens of small cuts on his body from the earlier fights. He had seen Fujin's clones cut through kunais with ease. So he began weaving hand signs. However, Fujin opened his mouth and shot 8 vacuum bullets. One bullet was aimed at his forehead and another was aimed at his heart. The remaining 6 were to cut off his escape route. The bounty hunter moved his head out of the way and tried to twist his body. However, the vacuum bullets were too fast. One grazed past his face and tore his right cheek and ear off. His bloody teeth could be seen. Another bullet hit his rib cage and pierced through his chest. It avoided his heart, but he was on his last legs. With a swing of Fujin's sword, he was beheaded. Fujin spread his chakra field to observe the other battles. He noticed, so Kakashi has already killed their leader. My clones and that guy have killed their opponents as well. Guy should win soon too. So just that seal master and the one-legged bounty hunter are alive. Fujin sensed that Kakashi was moving towards the one-legged guy. So he moved towards the seal master. Fujin's clones followed him as well. Yamanaka Ken had confronted the seal master. Both entered in a fight and were evenly matched. The only bounty hunter who wasn't attacked so far was the one-legged Jounin from Kiri. Despite having just one leg, he was moving quite fast through the forest. Unfortunately, Kakashi killed Renzo too quickly. He immediately gave chase and caught up. The Jounin noticed Kakashi and immediately turned around and weaved hand signs. Kakashi noticed his hand signs and weaved hand signs as well. Water release, water clone jutsu. Fire release, fireball jutsu. 4 water clones appeared next to the Kiri rogue. They saw a giant fireball headed straight at them. One of the clones weaved hand signs. Water release, water wall jutsu. A water wall appeared in front of them. The fireball hit it and exploded. A lot of water was turned into smoke and covered the area while the rest was splashed back at the ninja and his clones. They were about to attack once again when a sound of lightning was heard. Lightning traveled through the water that was splashed on them and electrocuted them all. All 4 water clones were instantly dispelled. The one-legged Jounin's eyes widened. He realized, he used my own jutsu against me. He barely maintained his consciousness. However, Kakashi appeared in front of him and placed his right hand on his chest. Immediately, an intense current passed through his body and knocked him out. Kakashi tied him up and placed a seal on his chest and thought, one captured alive. Guy should have captured his opponent as well. This mission is successful. Chapter 249, 8-Gate Lockup. Water Release, Water Needles Jutsu. Water split into hundreds of drops. Each drop turned into a needle and rained at Yamanaka Ken. Ken immediately flickered out of the way while making his hand seal. He flickered once again to get close to his opponent. Mind Destruction Jutsu. His opponent immediately moved out of the way and jumped on a branch behind him. Suddenly, his eyes widened. A vacuum bullet hit his chest and pierced straight through it. However, his body turned into water and collapsed. A few meters behind him, his body appeared once again. He looked at Fujin and said, "You can hide your chakra. No wonder I didn't sense you back then. But now that I know it, hiding it is useless." Fujin didn't reply, but Ken flickered close to him once again and tried using the same jutsu. The Seal Master took out a scroll and jumped back on the ground to dodge Ken's attack. He opened the scroll and smeared his blood across it and weaved a few hand signs rapidly. Fujin frowned and wondered, is he attempting to reverse summon himself somehow? Chakra gathered in his mouth as he shot a few vacuum bullets at him. At the same time, Ken once again used the mind destruction jutsu. However, a black tortoise projection made entirely of chakra appeared between Fujin and the Seal Master. Fujin's vacuum bullets hit the shell of the tortoise and were stopped. At the same time, an azure dragon projection appeared between Ken and him. The jutsu hit the dragon but had no impact on him. Fujin frowned as he analyzed, a barrier. At the same time, projections of a vermilion bird and a white tiger were also formed around him. After tanking the jutsus, the projections collapsed and transformed into a barrier around him. The walls of the barrier had the image of those 4 mythical beasts. A smile formed on his face. Fujin gathered a large amount of chakra while changing his location. Wind Release, Vacuum Cannon Jutsu. Fujin shot the powerful vacuum cannon at the wall which had the vermilion bird image. The entire barrier shook, but not a single crack appeared on it. The ninja inside the barrier also looked completely fine. He taunted, "This is my strongest barrier. You can keep attacking for days, it won't fall. Your mind control jutsus will also not work against my barrier." Fujin was surprised. He analyzed, this barrier is smaller, but it is even more sturdy than the 4 violet flames formation. Worse, it doesn't look like it is using his chakra. I won't be able to crack it using shadow clone explosions. Fujin immediately snorted, "You are deep within the land of fire. Let me see how long you will keep hiding here." He dispelled his clones and got some chakra back. He sat at some distance from the barrier in case the barrier had any more peculiar means. His eyes began glowing as he started observing the barrier properly. Ken also replicated Fujin's actions and stood in the opposite direction. After some time, the other Yamanaka ninja arrived. He went to Ken to ask him for an update. A few seconds later, Guy and Kakashi arrived. Both were carrying the ones they captured. Guy looked at the barrier and said, "I haven't seen such a barrier yet." "What is it?" Kakashi observed the barrier and replied, "Barrier Defense Seal Jutsu, 8-Gate Lockup." It's a wide-range barrier jutsu created by the Uzumaki clan to create a barrier around an entire village. Looks like he has a modified version of it to protect just himself. The Seal Master's expression became grim after seeing the three Konoha ninjas arrive. It implied that every other bounty hunter was killed. He replied, as expected of the copy ninja Kakashi. Since you know about the barrier, you know that you wouldn't be able to break it like the four violet flames formation. Kakashi replied, every barrier could be broken. Regardless, this is the land of fire. I could summon hundreds of ninjas and keep a watch on you until you can't maintain the barrier anymore. The Seal Master laughed and said, hundreds of ninjas just for me? Ha ha ha. I never expected my life to be so precious for you to waste so much manpower on me. Kakashi said, it isn't. You won't be able to imagine the torture you'd be put under for wasting our time. So I'll give you an offer. Surrender now and I will ensure that no harm will come to you. Lord Hokage might even allow you to turn a new page in your life. The Seal Master was surprised. He thought, I never imagined that Konoha would offer to recruit me. The offer was alluring. However, his eyes laid on the two Yamanakas and he rejected that idea. No, these two will read my memories. Once they do, they won't allow me to live. He opened another scroll and said, it's a tempting offer. Unfortunately, I can't do it. He made a confrontation hand seal. Immediately, dozens of explosion tags appeared from the scroll. A few stuck to his body while the rest stuck on the four symbols on the barrier. The Konoha ninjas immediately became alert. In the next moment, all the explosion tags exploded. Fujin immediately flickered away. Kakashi slammed his hands on the ground. Earth release, Earth Dome Jutsu. A dome appeared from the ground and covered him and Guy. At the same time, the last ninja grabbed Yamanaka Ken and escaped underground. The barrier collapsed. The chakra of the Seal Master and within the barrier fueled the explosion and caused a fire to spread in all four directions. It also caused cracks to spread within the ground around the barrier. Kakashi noticed that the ground under his feet as well as the dome had begun cracking. His expression became grim as he poured chakra into the ground to strengthen it. The two Yamanakas who were escaping underground had it rough. As the ground cracked, some heat entered the ground. After flickering a few times, Fujin turned around to see. The fire had spread for almost 300 meters from the explosion spot. He was surprised. What a crazy bastard. That barrier was a trap. He didn't intend to protect himself. He just wanted to use its chakra to amplify the explosions from those tags. He even used all his own chakra to amplify the explosions. Soon, the explosion died down and only the fire remained. A few water dragons appeared in between the fire and moved through the fire and began dousing it. The water also entered into the cracks in the ground. The two Yamanakas sensed it and left the underground. Fujin sensed that they were all fine. So he flickered back towards where Kakashi was. He first looked at the spot of the explosion. There was no sign of any dead body. The Seal Master's body was completely obliterated. Fujin looked at the two Yamanakas and asked, "Are you two all right?" Both of them had several burns on their skin. Ken nodded and said, "It's fine. It's just minor burns." He looked at Kakashi and asked, "Why did that bastard commit suicide? Wouldn't accepting your offer be much better for him?" Kakashi replied, "More than suicide, it looked like he wanted to burn all the dead bodies. This way, we won't be able to gain any intel from them. Of course, if he managed to kill any of us, that would have been a bonus for him." Ken looked around and frowned. all the dead bodies will have been burnt by the fire. We won't be able to read their memories now. It looks like he wanted to hide something crucial. He looked at the two ninjas that Kakashi and Guy had captured and added, information that these two wouldn't have. Kakashi nodded and said, yes. I guess he didn't know about this. He took out a scroll and opened it. He made a hand seal and Renzo's body popped out. He said, I had stored his body as he was likely their leader. Read his memories. Yamanaka-ken nodded and immediately got to work. He placed his palm on the forehead of the dead body and inserted his chakra into his head to inspect his memories. Fujin's eyes were glued to him. The Yamanaka clan's ability to read memories of dead bodies was something he had wanted for some time. Unfortunately, he didn't get to visit the TNI department frequently. During his time in the Umbu, he had only seen it being done thrice. Fujin analyzed, just like before, the chakra that invades the brain of the dead body is pure yin chakra. It is almost entirely the opposite of medical ninjutsu. But, how exactly does this work? Despite observing it for the fourth time, he didn't have any idea about the internal workings of the jutsu. Though he had killed hundreds of people, his Umbu squad would always be close by. He never got to experiment on the dead bodies. And he had no intention of experimenting on the only dead body still in his possession. Chapter 250, My Shamelessness is Not Enough. Ken continued reading his memories for a few minutes. Sweat appeared on Ken's body. It was apparent that reading memories from a dead body was very taxing on him. Finally, he let him go. His expression was grim. Kakashi asked, "Did you get any information from him?" Ken nodded and said, "I couldn't read all his memories, but the ones that I could show that this bounty hunting was a scheme made by Kirigakure." Kakashi furrowed his eyebrows. Ken continued, he hadn't gone rogue. Instead, he was given a mission by an elder from the Mizukage faction from Kirigakure. They currently have a huge advantage against the rebels who are hiding. Since they are hiding, the forces of Mizukage are ideal. But, the rebellion means that no one will issue missions there. So to raise funds, they issued him a mission. He was to go rogue, get in touch with other rogue Kiri ninjas and form a bounty hunter group. After collecting the bounties, they would secretly send a majority of the bounty to Kirigakure. That seal master was assigned as his deputy for this mission. Apart from them, all others were actual rogue nins who got used. Ken's words left the four Konoha ninjas speechless. Even after going rogue, those guys were still being made to work for Kirigakure unknowingly. Fujin couldn't help but think, what a scheme. And what shamelessness. Sigh, every time I think that I am getting too shameless, this world gives me a reality check. These bastards are 100 times more shameless than me. I need to improve myself. Back in Konoha, a chill passed through the spine of Hiruzen. He immediately got alert and observed his surroundings. He didn't notice anything weird and wondered, why did it suddenly feel like someone wanted to take everything from me? Are any of my former students or teammates scheming something? It has been a while since I have paid attention to their movements. Back in the vast forests in the Land of Fire, Kakashi said, it is a great scheme. The high number of ninjas going rogue should weaken them. But now, they have managed to make use of them instead. I guess that they have also sent guys like him to other villages. He looked at the other Yamanaka ninja and said, you inspect his memories as well. The ninja nodded and got to work. Kakashi looked at Fujin and said, according to our intel, the bounty hunters group shouldn't have been so big. I guess two different groups allied together. We should be able to confirm it after checking their memories. Fujin nodded. He had the same analysis after Renzo threatened him. Kakashi continued, "This mission is done, will you be coming back with us?" Fujin shook his head and answered, "No, I have another mission. I will take my leave." Kakashi nodded. Fujin flickered away. Guy looked at him and said, "He is quite strong, Kakashi. There weren't even half the bounty hunters alive by the time we reached." Kakashi nodded. He said, "Lord Third is very positive about his prospects. I guess his progress shouldn't be very surprising. Anyways, let's clean up the battlefield." Kakashi and Guy gathered the remains of every burnt dead body. Most of the dead bodies were badly burnt. The only ones who were in decent shape were the ones who had attempted to hide under the earth dome and were killed by Fujin's vacuum bullets. After storing all the bodies, the two Yamanakas used mind-body switch jutsu to take over the bodies of the two prisoners so that they wouldn't suddenly attack. The group returned back to Konoha. After returning, they reported the details of the mission to Hiruzen and Shikaku. After analyzing the data, Shikaku let out a sigh and said, "Despite being in such a mess, they still try to create a mess in other villages." Hiruzen said, "It's because they know that no one would retaliate with force. After all, no one wants to enter into their mess." He looked at Kakashi and instructed, "Deliver the dead bodies to torture and interrogation department. Have them inspect all their memories. Once we can't find any new memories, deliver their bodies to the underground market and claim their bounties." He looked at Shikaku and said, "Find a way to spread the news of the death of Higashi Renzo in Kiri. It will improve the morale of the rebels. Though I won't be involved directly, the Mizukage would have underestimated us way too much if he thinks that we can't retaliate at all. Also, form a few patrol squads to roam randomly through the country to find traces of any other rogue Kirigaku or ninja." Shikaku and Kakashi nodded and left the office. A frown formed on Hiruzen's face as he analyzed, "Kumo has already been trying to scheme a lot against us. Though Suna is allied with us, they are growing restless by the day. Iwa is silent for now, but once that fence-sitter makes up his mind, they will become extremely problematic. And now even Kiri is making moves? Sigh, these peaceful times might not last very long." In the middle of the desert, existed a city that commanded awe and reverence. Amidst the harsh desert environment, this majestic city stood proudly, surrounded by a colossal wall that stretched as far as the eye could see. The towering walls, crafted from sturdy sandstone, created an imposing barrier against the unforgiving desert winds. Samurais clad in desert-hued armor stood vigilant at the city gates. A group of traders approached the towering walls of the city and moved towards the samurais. The samurais noticed their arrival. Among them was Captain Hayashi Ryota, who was responsible for the safety of the city gates. One of the traders walked forward and bowed respectfully. The samurais scrutinized the group with a discerning gaze. The trader, dressed in fine desert attire, exuded an air of confidence and respectability. Ryota said, "Welcome to the Wind Capital, esteemed travelers. I am Captain Hayashi Ryota. State your purpose and present your trade permits for inspection." The trader said, "I am Takahashi Hiroshi. I have heard about your valor, Captain Ryota. I am pleased to make your acquaintance." Ryota's mood improved on being praised. Hiroshi handed him the required documents and said, "We are a new traders group from the land of Bird." Ryota and the other guards inspected the documents carefully and verified their authenticity. Satisfied with their findings, Captain Ryota returned the permits to Hiroshi and allowed them to enter the city. Ryota said in a diplomatic tone, "As honored guests of our city, we trust that you will adhere to our laws and customs during your stay. Please be mindful of the city's regulations and treat our citizens and fellow traders with respect. Enjoy your time in the Wind Capital and may your business ventures be prosperous." Hiroshi bowed deeply once again and said, "We are humbled by your hospitality, Captain Ryota. We shall uphold the highest standards of conduct and contribute positively to the commerce of this remarkable city." Hiroshi and his fellow traders entered the city along with their caravan. As soon as they did, they were immediately captivated by the stunning contrasts and breathtaking sights in the city. The streets wound through the city like intricate mazes and provided shelter from the scorching sun. Buildings of varying heights and styles rose proudly, their architecture inspired by the desert environment. Majestic minarets and ornate domes punctuated the skyline as their golden surfaces glimmered under the brilliant sun. Hiroshi couldn't help but mutter in awe, "So beautiful." Ryota smirked and said, "Everyone who enters the city for the first time feels the same." Hiroshi nodded and replied, "It's difficult to feel anything else." Ryota nodded. Hiroshi said, "I'd love to keep watching. Unfortunately, some of my goods are perishable. Could you tell me where the markets are situated, Captain Ryota?" Ryota nodded and provided him with the information. Hiroshi and the other traders began moving according to his instructions. Soon they left the sight of those samurais. Immediately, every trader's expression changed. The awe and captivation disappeared from their faces. Hiroshi said in a neutral voice, "Sell all of our products." All the traders immediately got to work. Hiroshi kept observing the city. They had goods in bulk. So they found appropriate buyers and sold all their goods at low prices. In a few hours, their entire caravan was empty. Hiroshi took all the money and said aloud, "Since we made the dangerous journey successfully and have plenty of money, we should enjoy some time in this village. Of course, in our time here, we will also check which goods are the most appropriate and profitable to trade. So enjoy yourself for the next few months." The traders smiled and rejoiced on getting a long break. They split into groups and left in different directions under the envious gazes of some people. Though trading was very risky, if done successfully, it was very rewarding. Hiroshi left alone and booked a room in one of the most expensive hotels in the Wind Capital. He stood on the balcony and saw the sunset. A golden hue was cast across the city, making it seem even more breathtaking than ever. A smile formed on his face as he thought, in terms of the scenery, the Wind Capital is leagues ahead of the Fire Capital.